Talk to me, Pay, about that kind of land and its value in real estate.
Yes, so it's definitely the preferred form of interest in a property, right, or ownership by many parties. That's one of the first questions people ask, is it freehold or leasehold? They're excited to know. And yeah, so freehold does have its advantages, but persons ought to remember that they also always governed by state agencies, right, in terms of the tenure of the land. So whether it be the EMA, Environment Management Agency, whether it be town and country, regional corporation, they would still adjudicate as to what could be done on these lands. So it's freehold, but you still have to adhere to the restrictions placed by the state. For example, if there are minerals found, in your land, oil, gas, other rights, those belong, to the state.
I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that because interestingly, and if you read deeds, you have to have that restriction enshrined. That's another beautiful point. Usually, in most deeds, it is mentioned where there is an exception. So they have, I should have had a deed on me, which should be easy to get in this office. I would ask Mrs. 𝗙𝗍𝗍 here with me if she can facilitate that. Just get me a copy of a random deed so that I could refer to it, showing our listeners, right? But in the meantime, the wording there usually with freehold, when you see whereas so own it, now witness it that you have, in consideration of the money you spent, holds this property, right? In fee simple, that is the term usually used in the deed. And sometimes you see subject, however, to the covenants and restrictions herein, and the mineral rights. The mineral rights is separate in a deed, and some people retain their mineral rights with their freehold ownership. So that means that what is on the land and beneath the land can belong to them. Thank you so much. She heard me. Yeah. So I have an arbitrary deed here that we can quickly just take a look at. This is not a freehold. This is a deed of assent. So it's a bit different using the Property Act, right? However, in normal deeds, you would usually see how you hold it. And I was looking for a deed that is freehold. All right, we could kind of use this a little. We can use it. Can use this deed. However, yes. So what you mentioned there with the mineral rights. Some people have retained their mineral rights, but in Trinidad and Tobago, it does not happen anymore. So if you dig and you find the gold, it's separated.
Yes, correct. So it's always good to keep that in mind. And really, you can't just build anything you want on freehold land, right? There are certain stipulations, there are certain codes, zones for even freehold land, although it's owned entirely by you. But it does provide some cost advantages. And I know we will touch on this as we will discuss, but also some of the most valuable properties in the country are leasehold, right? In some of the most prestigious areas. For example, Westmoreland, right, is leasehold land. So it's on a case-by-case basis, and a person can say that freehold land is always better than leasehold land. It really depends on the situation and the location.
Yes. I want to mention something as well, because this mineral thing is very important. I want persons to consider the Minerals Act, Chapter 6103 of our laws of Trinidad and Tobago. that speak of the mineral rights as it relates to land. There are private mining rights, meaning that the rights to mine are not public mining rights, right? And the mineral rights in Trinidad and Tobago is generally severed. The history of us is that we have not allowed private citizens to retain mineral rights in a domestic manner. So generally, the the mining rights is something separate and apart from, yes, you have an actual deed. Good, you can bring it for me. Thank you. Right. So generally, mineral estate is a separate interest in the land that can be severed from the surface of the land and not included, right? And I'm just taking this time to find some real deeds so that I can show you guys what we mean. In the meantime, Mr. McLean, you could go ahead with leasehold.
Right. So leasehold would involve a tenure that would have some sort of restrictive covenant, or it may be held by a company or a vested party, right? So they would then lease either shares in a company, or they would lease portions of the parcel of land to different tenants, as we would say, right? Who would have a leasehold interest, and this could expire and be renewed upon the consent, either if the lessor is the state or a private institution, right? So you find leasehold arrangements in multifamily dwelling, townhouses, condominiums, like One Woodbrook Place, that would be leasehold arrangements. If you live in a gated community, you would find, no doubt, that it would be a leasehold arrangement. You may have a HOA, homeowners association, that collects dues and fees and so forth. So the purpose of the leasehold interest is usually to maintain some level of standard or uniformity in the development, right? So think about someone moving into a townhouse development, probably mid to upper income, and trying to open a mechanic shop. It just can't work, or trying to probably become a dog trainer living in a gated community. These things will be a hindrance to other residents. So hence the reason the leasehold arrangement has built-in covenants that would safeguard the rest of homeowners or persons who dwell on the property.
Yes. And more importantly than that, because there are some properties that they may not be part of a development, but they are leasehold nonetheless. Like most of the property in Woodbrook area are governed by statutory leases, as leases with the state. And one of the most important things to identify how you have leasehold ownership is that there is a time. That's the first identification in property law that differentiates freehold interest and right from leasehold. Leasehold is governed by a set and specific time, referred to as the term of the lease. These terms are usually in intervals of 30 years, 99 years, 199 years, 999 years, and they usually also carry rent. In order to create a lease, there are certain things that you need to have. There needs to be time, would the unity need time. So there needs to be a term of the lease. There needs to be rents paid, whether it is $1 per year or whatever it is. There needs to be some sort of payment in the consideration like that. And of course, the terms and conditions of the lease, the obligations that restricts the lessee in relation to how the land can be used, how the land can be assigned. It's another thing, When you have a lease, you cannot convey your lease. the word convey can only be used for freehold property, where you have deeds of conveyance, where you convey your interest or give it up. However, when you have retained leasehold interest, you can assign. You're assigning a portion of your lease, or the remaining portion there is actually left on the term of your lease to the new person. So you will see deed of lease assignment. You don't see deed of lease conveyance, because you can't, it's two different things. You can't convey a lease. You can assign a lease. And these are some critical things I want people to understand. Right? Mr. McLean, getting a little feedback if you can mute when I, right. So that when you have a lease, you want to make sure that there's a lease assignment happening after. A deed of conveyance cannot come after a deed of lease. These are some red flags real estate agents and other persons should be looking for. You must question the title if you realize that just so a deed of conveyance and before it was a lease, impossible. You can have a deed of conveyance first and a lease coming out of it, but you cannot have it the other way around. You can't be creating new interests out of something different. So there cannot be freehold interest created out of a lease interest. And you cannot assign more of your lease than you have. So if you had a 999-year-old lease, you cannot go and assign 1,001 years. You don't have that. You have to assign 199, 699, whatever. What has to be less than 999 years. If you have a 30-year lease, you can assign for the remainder of the 30-year lease and then it ends. You cannot assign for more than that.